There we go. Now I'll be able to hear what she's talking. Right back.
So you know the appointment I told you about? You canceled 10 minutes after I told you. This is like his third time canceling. It's like so frustrating with them. Hey, why? He's just been busy with work, which I get, but like it was like at 6
I think
o'clock.
they're gonna have it.
So there's no way you're working at 6 o'clock. Or whatever. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, he just lying. He's like,
How are you?
this has been going on for about 2 weeks now. He said another, if you had it wrong, he said. Our original appointment was 2 weeks. We scheduled from today to today. Yeah, it's true.
Hi.
What amazing fun stuff is going on now?
I'm gonna pull up the form class. I'm here.
Yes, who is today's day?
Connie.
Connie.
I don't know why it's not really I'm logged into KW. But sign in my KW. Oh, look, I want to sign it. Go back to, go ahead. That's the first time it's something to me all day. I'm logged in, maybe it's because I'm logged in. I was gonna try and make a little blast about it, but I have not Facebook. Yeah. Yeah. But once Connie gets on, I'm just gonna make her co-host and then let her
Yes.
take the show.
Do her thing.
Get all the forms pulled up. There we go.
Process.
I just have a quick question.
I wonder if she, oh, hold on one second.
Not actually looking for me, but give me a second.
Yeah, I am trying to figure out, for some reason, when I share my screen, it's not sharing, or am I doing something wrong?
So you are sharing, so go one more time to the share screen option, so go up here, actually, do new share. You're just gonna click on.
Oh, gotcha.
One
I
of
just
those
said that
screens.
wrong. Okay.
Nope, you're good, you had everything right, and I
Great.
was like looking at it in the training room, it looks good, we got a couple people in
How can I
person.
make this bigger here? now?
So do you want?
Full
uh,
screen right now before I go back to sharing.
So you want this full screen? Because right now they can see you just
Okay,
fine, so
perfect.
if you want, because
I'll
I've got
leave it
them so they
there.
can see you.
Okay.
And then you can pick whatever screen you're using.
Perfect. All right, so
You
right
just-
now I'm sharing this,
And then you hit
correct?
share.
Got
and then
it.
You're all set, ma'am.
All righty. Hi, everyone, and thank you for attending. Let me shut my door. Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great, great. Well, I am teaching this for Saber today, who we all have in our thoughts and prayers and hoping for her quick recovery. But I will try to do as good a job as Saber does, but we all know she's the master of this. So, but I will go through the process today of teaching y'all the North Carolina listing forms, which right now, obviously, everybody in this market wants to get as many listings as possible because those are the ones that are selling really quickly, and that is where you really want to be. So I'm going to teach you the best process of all the forms you'll need in order to make sure you understand when you go for your meeting consultation what you are faced with and the kind of questions you're going to have and the knowledge you'll need to make sure that you are well prepared for a listing appointment, know exactly what forms you need to use and what their purpose is. So I'm not sure how this one's set up if you have any questions, but I'm just going to start through it. If there's any questions, feel free to unmute and let me know, and I will answer those for you. I don't know, I'm hoping you can see this form here. Let me see how I can get this over so I can scroll.
I just have a quick question.
Certainly.
Would you be able to email this form so I can
Absolutely.
print it?
Yeah, I can also tell you where some of these forms are coming from. We have
Oh, yeah.
several resources. One of the ones you're going to, obviously in your Loop or DocuSign, you've got the library of forms, but these kind of forms can be found in two places. One of them is the, actually, I just learned where I got this one today from Carla. So this one, it's actually in your MyKW, where you go under the intranet and then go to Marketplace, and you will see some forms. So these are some extra forms you'll have there. But if you can't find that, feel free to email me and I'll simply send these over to you. Now,
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, another really good resource, and let me show you that real quick. Sorry, let's see. I'm gonna unshare this. Hold on a minute. Stop share for a minute here and get you on this other one. Resource, let's see. Okay, it's called KW Resource, and let me share my screen with you. This will kind of help you as well. Hold on, I always have trouble sharing these screens. Here we go, share screen. And share. Okay, so KW Resource is basically you go to KWB for Valentine resources.com. And what this has, which I just love, is if you look up here and you just hover under Office Resources, you'll go to Forms and Checklists. Now, just to make sure, when you first sign in here, you do have to have a login, and the password to get in there, and I just wrote it down for y'all, it's capital B AMC 350. So only the B is capital, and then AMC 350. And that will let you log into this Keller Williams resource page. And I use it a lot to go to forms and checklists. And right here is where it says guest area, enter your password. That's where you'll put in that password and click on go. And then you're able to go in here and utilize some of these extra general forms or office checklist or South Carolina. So for example, if I go into get forms, they have added several forms that we need that may not be in our library resource because they're either MLS forms or they're office forms. And so this is where you'll also be able to find, for example, the firm exclusive agreement, the coming soon agreement, and many more in that respect. Now, one that you will definitely want to use when you are getting ready to do a listing is go under Office Checklists. And as you'll see here, you're going to have all kind of great resources. Contract to close, what are the steps? Office file North Carolina listing checklist, great form right here, because this is a form that you're definitely going to want to go with in order to make sure you have all your forms, you're turning them in a timely manner. For example, once you get a listing agreement signed and executed, you have to, and this is something you have to turn into the office through command. You're going to have to do that within 3 days, okay? So it tells you that right here, submit for review and DocuSign within 3 days of effective listing agreement, which is, of course, once you and the seller have signed a document. Now, this is not an office rule or Keller Williams. This is actually North Carolina law. So you must make sure you have those certain forms in there within that time frame. Okay, so this is a great checklist, which basically tells you everything you need. So if you forget what forms, you can revert back to this as well. So I am going, so any questions on that? Like I say, great thing for any kind of checklist, whether you're doing a buyer or whatnot. But of course, today we're talking about listings. So that is where you're going to go to find your listing checklist and make sure you have everything. Okay. Now going back, so that's one area. And like I said, the other form, I did have to go find through our MyKW intranet and find that under forms. So that was a little different step. If you'd like, I'll show you that real quick, just so you know. Let's see here. This is the quickest way for me to get here. Okay, let me share this. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Okay, this is this one. Can y'all see this? Am I sharing the new screen? Let me make sure I'm sharing the
Yes.
new. You
Yeah, I
can?
can see it.
Okay,
Mhm.
wonderful. It's not what I wanted either. Excuse me. Hold on one second. Let me just do it this way. She just sent it to me, so it's a lot easier. That's not it. That's not it. Well. Sorry, give me 1 second here. Okay, it's mykw.kw.com. Can you see all that?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to go down here where it says my KW MC350 intranet. You know, that's where we list all our, hey, we got a new listing. Hey, we, need a vendor. That's where you see all that. But on the very top here, you'll see Market Center. And if you click on that, you'll also see a document tab here. And if you click on that document tab, you will see a bunch of other valuable resources as far as forms that you can use. And the one for this one here will be the home buying process. Excuse me, no, that's for the buyer. Hold on, where is it? Seller. Not it. No, of course I can't find it now. I know this is where it was. Hold on just a second. I don't know. This is for home buying, so that's not the one I want. Well, I will go back and find it because I just found, oh, here we go. I think it's down here. Listing to close. Yeah, listing to close process. Okay, so it's listed under listing to close process under there if you want to get this form. All right, and I won't go too much into, oh, you're welcome. I won't go too much into the details on this form, but it basically gives you a little overview, kind of like a bird's eye view of the whole process. The, meeting with your sellers, the initial consultation, pricing it, so forth, marketing, and going all the way down to settlement, okay, which is closing. And just remember, when we talk about settlement, when your buyer and seller that you're representing the seller are going to closing to sign those documents, that is considered settlement, but it is not actually legally transferred until it's recorded at the courthouse, which is usually several hours after that. But that is when it's legally transferred, where you will want to say to your seller, okay, you do not want to convey the keys until it is legally recorded. So in other words, at closing, when they're all signing, that is not the time you want to release the key. You want to suggest your seller or recommend to wait until it's after it's recorded. And this is especially important. For example, you really want to try to always get morning closing, but let's say there were no closings available until a Friday afternoon. Well, there is a chance that you may go to settlement and sign with your seller, but it's not going to get recorded that day because it's too late in the day. If that happens, it won't get recorded till Monday. Now that usually presents a problem. That's why I say I usually try to make sure I get a early morning appointment, or the buyer agent obviously picks that, but to ensure that we can record that day and transfer those keys. If not, if you let them in over the weekend, the seller says, well, I don't mind if they go in there. You need to make sure to explain the liability of that. If that house burns down over the weekend, it still belongs to the seller and still their liability. So just a little thing I wanted to point out to make sure everybody understood that. Any questions on that? No, okay. Let me go to my next form and bear with me with the sharing here. All right, so I am going to start off with the pre-listing document you want to have. So this is the pre-listing North Carolina package, which you can also find under the intranet resources. And again, if you can't find any of this, feel free to email me. I'm happy to send you any form you need, because sometimes they're a little scattered because some of them are just created for our office versus some are an MLS form versus others, maybe, you know, the North Carolina forms that are in our DocuSign or .load. Okay, so starting off with a pre-listing package. Now, one of the things, obviously, with a listing appointment, you are generally going to meet at the owner's home. This is very important to me because when I go to a pre-listing appointment, I want to be able to assess the house. In other words, physically walk through the house, make my notes on upgrades, make my notes on condition, you know, really assess the home before I can prepare a really good comparative market analysis, which is a CMA, which this is obviously a mandatory thing that we have to do for every listing. The commission wants to know that we didn't just pull that price out of our hat, that we are actually have some data confirming why we listed it at the price we did. But that's very difficult to do if, especially if the property has never been on the market, you haven't seen it. At least that's how I a lot of times get in the door for that listing appointment. I don't generally give them numbers until I have assessed a home, and I explain it that way. I want to assess your home. I need to physically lay my eyes on it to give you a really good analysis. And of course, that's considered the listing appointment. Okay. So prior to going to my listing appointment, I am going to prepare a listing package. Okay. That is going to consist of a lot of forms, all the forms that I will need the seller to eventually sign. For example, the property disclosures, the mineral and oil rights, all these are all forms that I want them to see. Now, at this point, I haven't won the listing yet. I'm just going to the appointment, but I want to look savvy and give them all the information that I can in a listing package. And basically, I prepare that by putting together all the documents that are going to be part of the listing package, all the documents that they're going to be signing. Okay, so we're going to start off with the working with real estate agents. And again, I'm going to go deeper into each of these forms, but I wanted to start off by just making sure you understand what is absolutely necessary at your appointment. So the very first thing that I do, I'm going to disclose the working with real estate agents disclosure and make sure they understand this is not a contract. This is a disclosure. Okay. All I'm doing is explaining agency in North Carolina, explaining to them how it works. Now, one of the things you may think, well, everybody knows the listing agent is representing the seller and the buyer agent is representing the buyer. But you got to remember, whether you've been in the business and have taken the classes and been in it a year or 20 years, the general public doesn't really understand. You know, there are a lot of savvy sellers out there that have sold multiple homes and bought multiple homes. They understand it. But in general public, you need to explain this. And this disclosure is very important because they need to understand as a seller what their options are. Okay, whether they want to entertain dual agency and designated agency, what you're going to be doing for the seller in terms of the agency part of it. In other words, your fiduciary duty is going to be to them. But again, I'll go into that when I get to that form and explain it. Questions and answers on home inspections. Okay, that is also in our forms. This is basically, it used to be a little orange brochure, which I think you can still get, but now they've put it into our form section. And it's basically some questions and answers about how home inspections work. Okay. Home warranty brochures. This is something I always take to my listing appointments. And obviously I have some home warranty companies that I have worked with for a long time that I prefer over others. But at times they usually try to bring 2 or 3 choices for them. And I don't mind telling them the one I recommend is this one. I've had good experiences with this one. I've used them on my own home. So I bring those along to explain how the home warranties may come into play in selling their home. And again, I'll go into that a little bit further when we get to that. Now, the other one that you want to bring them is to offer to purchase and contract, because I spend a lot of time at my listing appointments explaining the offer to purchase to them, because that is a big piece. Not everybody understands that we're a due diligence state. We were not always, I can't remember, it might've been 2011 or so where that started. But before that, there was no due diligence period. It was kind of like similar South Carolina. If we couldn't agree on repairs, the buyers had to have a reason to pull out. You couldn't just pull out of a contract. So they usually found loopholes, or again, if they didn't agree, they would terminate. But there were a lot of lawsuits over time that came from that. And so the commission did decide to go with a due diligence contract. Now, at first, we're all kind of weary about it, but the more I've worked with this contract, I do find it to be a better way to not create a lot of liability. So basically, a buyer, as we all know, has the right to terminate for any or no reason at all. There doesn't have to be a disagreement or non-compliance on them agreeing on the repairs. They can choose to terminate for whatever reason they choose. Of course, we have a due diligence fee that will go to the seller, and there's other things, but I want to really thoroughly explain that to the seller to make sure they understand the contract. Now, obviously, I haven't gotten the listing yet, but what I'm creating is showing the seller value. I'm showing them or telling them about what's going to happen when you get an offer. You want them to understand or feel that you really are knowledgeable about that, because that's the most important piece for them when the offers come in. They want to make sure that you understand it, that you are going to guide them properly. So that's why I really take a lot of time to explain it to them, to show my value, that I understand how offers work. I understand this market. I understand multiple offers. We are in a very different market than we were a couple of years ago, as we all know. So those of you that are newer to it, you are experiencing a whole different way to negotiate, a whole different tactics that we're having to use to win offers. And in turn, as a listing agent, I need to be able to advise my clients properly how to deal with this new market. What are the things we're going to look for from that buyer's contract that's going to make this offer better than another offer? What tactics have been used the last year to win these offers? So I really take the time to do that. And I would suggest you would too, again, to show them value. Okay. Now, one important aspect of that, you are not allowed to give a regular offer to purchase and contract to anyone unless they're a North Carolina agent. Okay, real estate agent. So I cannot gift them the offer to purchase and contract without the one saying sample. So in your doc loop or DocuSign, in the templates there, you do have sample forms. Make sure when you take that sample offer to purchase in your listing package, you only use the sample one. And it's got it highlighted across saying sample. So that can't be used. Okay, so I'm basically giving them an offer to purchase, but it's not one that could be used because they're not North Carolina agents, and we're not supposed to do that. And you don't want them to take that and, all of a sudden get a sale outside without your help and then decide to come a FSBO and use those forms. Those are only for North Carolina agents. Okay, then the other form that you have to supply to them is the sample of the professional service disclosure. Again, all these sample forms are in the same area, so they're quick to pull up. Now, I always print everything in my listing package, and I use, Keller Williams here. We can get these nice, these nice folders, black, red, or white. and whatever you choose, but I like to use one of those folders to put in my CMA I've prepared before I go. I'm putting in all these forms, working with real estate agent, question and answers, home warranty brochure, sample of the contract. I'm putting all this in there for them. And on the right side of my brochure or my folder, that's when I'm going to go ahead and use the forms that they're going to have to use when we get ready to list, because I want them to see what are all the forms I'm going to have to fill out. And, you know, most of the time, if I'm lucky, I win that listing appointment while I'm there. I want to impress them so much, they're not going to interview another person. And I may be at the point already for them to get ready and sign, okay, a listing agreement with me. So I go ahead and include the Residential Property and Owners Association disclosure. And what I do, I go ahead and put in the address on it, the name of the owners, which I got from the tax records, unless I already, you know their name. But I'm gonna go ahead and fill that out, personalized for them, to where all they would need to do at that point is fill out the form. Okay, now there's nothing wrong with, let's say they say, okay, I really want to go with you. I'm gonna sign. I leave them the Residential Property and Owners disclosure for them to fill out at their convenience, because it's a very extensive form. It's 4 pages. Now, if they feel like they need help, of course, I'll sit down and help them, but they're the ones that have to fill it out. I can't fill it out for them, and they're going to be signing it. Okay, so, but I can certainly answer questions if they ask, well, what does this mean? Well, I'm answering this. But again, what I'm telling them mostly is, at this point, you need to answer these questions as yes or no. For example, do you know of any leaks you currently have? If they tell you, well, I did have a leak in my kitchen, but it was repaired a year ago, you don't have to disclose that. It's asking right now, do you know of any active leaks or blah, blah, blah. If they had in the past, but it's been repaired, that is not something they need to disclose. They are disclosing as of right now of anything that they know that is wrong with the property. Okay, now that doesn't spur the buyer from not getting an inspection. Okay, that really has nothing to do with that, because a buyer does have to look at this form prior to making an offer. So it's my responsibility as the listing agent, not only to make sure this is filled out before I put it on the market, but I'm going to attach it to the MLS. Now, years ago, agents were not real good about that. So let's say I was ready to make an offer on their property. I went and looked at the attachments on the MLS and it wasn't there. So now I had to track down the listing agent and said, can you please send me the residential property disclosures, as the buyer needs to see that prior to making an offer. Okay, so the simplest way is attach it to the MLS, and keep in mind, you and other agents, only agents in the MLS can access those disclosures from the MLS. The general public cannot click on anything to get your attachments. You are putting those out there for other agents, so that if your house is shown and they're ready to make an offer, they have everything they need. They don't need to track you down, or you're not going to get the offer where they said, well, we haven't seen it yet. Make sure you have it attached. Okay. Same with the mineral and oil, which is also called MOG. You'll hear it called a MOG. That is a mandatory disclosure in North Carolina. Okay. So you must make sure they fill that out. And I'll go into that form a little later too, but that one is really, it came, I believe, from a lawsuit in Texas where I believe it was D.R. Horton that was selling a subdivision, and they had severed the rights underneath the neighborhood of the oil rights, and then went ahead and sold their homes, and the sellers were not aware that they had severed the rights. Now, obviously, we don't have a lot of oil here in North Carolina underneath our properties, but it did become a mandatory disclosure. And most of the time, people are just filling out, You know, have you ever severed the rights? No, no, no representation, no, no, and no representation. But again, you need to just explain it to them that this may, you know, this is probably not something that is in this particular seller's underneath their home, but it is a mandatory disclosure. And again, attach it to an MLS. Lead-based paint addendum, very important if it's built prior to 1978. Okay, and this is also for rental properties, even though we don't do a lot of rentals here. But if you're an investor and you're getting ready to rent out some of your properties, you must also include a lead-based addendum. Security system disclosure. I'll go in that a little bit further when we get into the listing agreement, but there, you know, you do have to disclose, there's so many different ones now. They used to be attached to the home and some were leased. Now, most of them are like your ring or your, you know, ones that people can buy and then take along with them. Okay. And utilities, this is basically, we also have a great list under our resource page that's called utility list. I bring that to the seller so they can go ahead and fill out, you know, who their utility providers are, their phone numbers. So when the time comes, when the buyer's agent wants to know what utility companies do we need to notify to change over prior to closing, I can simply supply them with the list from the seller, specifying who the companies are. All right, and again, with the listing package here, we got the working with real estate and of course the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Now that's not a sample form there. I go ahead and pretty much fill it out to a certain extent. Okay, I fill out, for example, the parcel ID, all the legal information. I can't fill everything out yet because I haven't sat down with the seller and had the questions and filled it out properly, but I can at least put their name, our name, because I am trying to get to the point where they're going to sign it right then and there. That's my goal. Okay, so the more I fill it out, the more prepared I am. That my hope then is to have them sign it while I'm at that official listing appointment. Okay. Coming soon and no show, that will be another form if that is something that you're going to recommend, which I highly recommend. Great way to get your property out there and let people know it's coming soon. The other one is the firm exclusive agreement, which I'm going to go more into as well when we get to that form. But that is another option that you can use if the seller chooses to, or you're not quite ready. For example, the coming soon is a great one to use if you haven't had the property measured yet, which is one of the things you have to do as a listing agent. You can either measure it yourself. I wouldn't recommend that unless you're really good at it for liability purposes. Just hire one of the many companies. I use Matt Benton, who used to be in our office here with Measure America. So I simply email them, say, hey, I have a listing coming up. How quickly can you get out there and get it measured and get me a floor plan? Okay, that is a requirement of Keller Williams, and it must be in our file that we have proof of measurement. So you can't just go by the tax records, or if the listing was an old listing, you can't just take that and assume that is correct. Now, there are times when my seller can supply me with an appraisal, which an appraisal, they also have to do measuring, and you can use that if it's, you know, up to date, accurate, they haven't made additions. That is a valid source. But again, most of the time I choose to have it professionally measured to make sure my liability is covered. And it's normally, depending on the size of the home, you're looking at $75 to $125. Okay. Now you can get fancy and order fancier floor plans they can create and spend more, but really the point of doing that is because it's a liability and it's a requirement of our office to make sure that we have it measured. Professional service disclosure, I'll get into that a little bit more. It's basically a form that we use to another liability form. For example, we use it mostly for buyers. Let's say that buyer is buying a basement home and I recommend to them, hey, I would do a radon test. I feel it's important, especially in basement homes near water. I explain to them what it is, but let's say they don't want to go with my recommendation and say, no, we don't want to do that. Well, then I'm going to use that professional service disclosure to cover myself, where it basically has a place where they accepted my recommendation or they decided to waive it. So if they decide to waive it, and let's say they get in there and they have radon and someone gets cancer due to that, they can't come back and sue Keller Williams for that, because Keller Williams has a form now saying that they chose to waive that recommendation. Because, you know, you want to use these forms to cover yourself, because you can go back and say, I told them about it. I told them, but it's your word against them. Okay. They can say, well, she never recommended, or he never recommended that. Well, that professional service disclosure is a great way to protect yourself, because we can recommend vendors, we can recommend closing attorneys, we can recommend anything we want, but it's their choice whether they decide they want to go with that. And if they do, they've either accepted it or waived it. Okay. Another thing you want to have prepared is your seller's net sheet. And I have a copy of that I'm going to show you. And the seller's net sheet is really, I feel, important for a seller to understand what their net figure is. And it also educates you to know what are the seller's costs. You know, for example, the deed stamp tax, that's always a seller's cost. So you letting them know ahead of time, Mr. Seller, these are your costs. Typically in a transaction, you may not be able to determine the repair amount prior, but you can at least show them, hey, this is what you're going to net if we list it at this price and we get this price. This is what you owe. These are your fees for closing. So they'll understand approximately their net figure. And again, it's an approximation. Okay. But it's a great thing to take along to your listing appointment to give them a good idea if, you know, once you get to that point. Showing time appointment sheet. This is something else I'll go over. This is basically, as you know, showing time is the service that we use to show our properties. Okay, it's a nationwide service. But what you're going to need to get from the seller is, Mr. Seller, do you want an appointment required where you're notified, where you can decline it if you're not ready? Do you want to go and show, which is not recommended unless you have a vacant property? That means if I set an appointment for a go and show status listing, I can go right in. I can set the appointment 12 and walk in the house at 12:05. Obviously, that's not what you're going to recommend to someone living there that may have kids, dogs, needs to get out of the house, needs some time to get out of the house. And that's where you come in giving your recommendation. And mostly you're going to find appointment required, meaning that either the seller or the listing agent, someone has to give you an okay, simply by texting back a yes or a Y, that you can go to that appointment. But that's what the showing time appointment sheet's all about. We're going to fill it out with them so they understand all their options. For example, my seller might say, you know, I have 6 kids and 2 dogs. If someone makes an appointment, I need at least 2 hours notice. Well, I can set that up in showing time to require a 2-hour notice. So if an agent tries to make an appointment and it's 10 o'clock in the morning, they try 10:30, it's not going to let them until the 2-hour time frame. Does that make sense? So that's an important sheet, especially when you feel like, hey, I'm going to get this listing. Let's go ahead. And again, there's nothing wrong with bringing as much information as you can. You're showing your value. You're showing you know what you're doing. You know, you're not just there to talk about a price. You're professional, you know all the right forms. And all these forms are all liabilities for the seller that we want to make sure they understand what they're signing, what their options are to make the best decision that they want to make for selling their home. Okay. The Matrix MLS data input worksheet, that is basically, it's a great tool for new agents, okay, because it basically is in paper form how you're going to be entering it in the MLS. all the information you're going to need. Okay, once you have done a few, no, you're not going to really need that sheet. You'll be able to know what notes you need to take to enter everything correctly. But I love that worksheet for newer agents because you're not going to miss anything. You don't have to call the seller back and say, hey, I forgot to ask you this one question that I have to put in MLS. Again, it's learning, a good learning process, and it's a great one just to keep your notes and make sure you remember everything about the house. Now, one of the things I personally do when I go to the house, besides take a lot of notes and do a really good walkthrough with the seller, okay, and keep in mind, this is a great time to build a good rapport during your listing appointment. Obviously, they want you to come look at the house. You know, they're going to ask you, should I change this? Should I paint this? You know, so that's a really great time to build a great rapport. And that can take sometimes 30, 45 minutes to really thoroughly walk through a house, look at all the issues that may need to be changed prior to listing it, and giving them good feedback. And also, it's going to help you when you go back to the office or wherever you go and do a really good comparative market analysis or a CMA, which I always do a long CMA. There's a short CMA that's quick and easy, but the long CMA is where I make the adjustments. You know, if this is a very dated kitchen or there's things like that, you know, I'm going to compare it to other properties so I can make those different adjustments accordingly when I get ready to try to come up with a price range. Notice I said price range. I personally don't like to give a seller one price, you know, just, hey, $750. I like to give them a range, okay? And the reason for that is when you're given a range, you want to have the seller participate in your pricing somewhat. You know, Mr. Seller, what were you thinking? You know, now you are going to get these sellers that are like, well, I want you to tell me first, right? Which is fine. But my point is I try to involve them. And when I give them even my final CMA, I'm going to give them more range. Now, when I get to the appointment, obviously they want to know, what do you think I should list this for? You know, and I've already done homework at this point. I may not know everything about the inside of the house unless maybe it was just listed. I always look up the house to see if I can find it, to look at the inside to get more on the yard. But if I don't have all that information, and let's say it was a new construction and now it's first time selling, it was never in the MLS, I really can't make a good educated decision until I get there. But I can at least kind of per square footage, per the neighborhood, I can already have an idea in my head. So that's why if they really push you for that, you can give them a range, but say, let me take the time to do a thorough analysis. Now that I've seen your home, now that I understand your upgrades and understand, you know, I've been in your backyard. I know what buyers are looking for. I can give them a better range once I've seen the home. Okay. Let's see. Showing time, we did that. Okay, graph paper for measurements. Now, again, I don't do my own measurements. First of all, I don't think we're trained enough. There's so many, you know, it's not worth your time, in my opinion, to take a measuring class and do it by yourself. Again, liability. Number two, I'd rather have a professional one do it that I know doing it correctly, and they will give me a nice floor plan for me to put in the MLS and also to put into Keller Williams files that I have had it professionally measured. I've covered my liability there. Okay. And keep in mind, do not go by tax records on square footage. It's very common to be incorrect. It's very, very common. I never go by that. Used to in the old days, yes, agents just put in what's on the tax records, but do not do that. That you could also be, you know, a new construction puts in there, it's 3,700 square feet. And the seller says, well, I could have sworn it was more like 39 to 4,000. It's another reason you want to make sure you're not leaving square footage on the table. That would be more money, obviously. So keep that in mind. And of course, I always bring notes. Yes.
This is Cindy. Where do you, thank you for doing this, first of all.
Sure.
I'm looking for, it sounds like you're going over a checklist. It's which is different than what you're presenting on the board. But as I went into those forms, I can't find anything for North Carolina. I'm able to find a pre-buying pack for North Carolina and something for South Carolina. Can you?
Now the forms that you'll need are on your seller listing checklist.
Well,
and
where
I'll-
is that?
Okay, I will show you what that is. That is under where we talked about the KW resources. Let me go back to it if you
We
missed
couldn't
that.
find it.
Okay, let me find that for you. I'll show you exactly where to find it so that you know.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, see what it says off. Okay, now I went into KWB, that's for Valentine, resources.com.
Right. We found that.
Okay, so go under office checklist right here in the middle.
Yeah, I did that as well, Connie. And what you'll find is the very last form says pre-listing list pack. It's for South Carolina.
Oh,
There's-
you're asking me where I got the pre-listing one.
That's right. What we
That,
were,
that was the one that I can email it to you, but that is under, for some reason, it's under our intranet where we went into that office. You're talking about that form that I just had before. Yes, that
it
is
would also
actually,
be helpful on this particular page that you're looking at right here. If there were a pre-buying and buyer folder for South Carolina, there's one for North Carolina, but there's not one for South Carolina. And then a pre-listing for North Carolina, because there's one for South Carolina, but there's not one for North Carolina. You
yeah,
see?
that the one for North Carolina, unfortunately, is in the other area, and I'll show you that again. Let's.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, of course. I'm sorry if I went a little fast. That's maybe where I lost y'all. And I know that is confusing. I had a hard time finding that form myself this morning. So you're going to go under your intranet. Let me go to the very first page so you know what I'm talking about. You know, this page right here where you go down and you can go on your intranet. Like if you were going to say, hey, I got a new listing, or hey, I need a vendor. It's under your mykw.kw.com. That's how you get to this. And then once you're in that, that is when you're going to go down here. See where it says quick links? You're going to go to the intranet. That is our Valentine intranet, where if I wanted to send out to everybody in the office, hey, I have a refrigerator to sell, my seller doesn't want, or see, there's doing all kind of things, open house, whatever, okay? That's how you get to that. Now, once you're on this page though, you want to click on the Market Center up here. See that? If y'all want to go in it and go along with me, that might help.
Hey, Connie, I found what you're looking at. When you went back
did?
to, yes, when you went to my quick links, which one of those quick links did you click on?
Okay, let me find that one again for you. So now I'm going, you mean right from here?
From the main page, from the main
Oh,
page.
from the main page. I went down to the intranet. Let me go back to it. Hold on. Is this the page you're on right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so see down there under quick links, the very first one says MC350 intranet.
Okay.
Click on that one. Okay, and when you get to that, you're going to go up here where it says Market Center. And it's basically access shared office documents and resources. I think some people have created some of these forms for us, and then they're sharing it with the Market Center. So then you
Okay.
click on Market Center and you click on Documents.
I got you.
And then you're going to have all kind of documents that will, you know, the home buying process, just all kind of documents that will help you with this part. Let me see if I can find this exact one. I just did this. Let's say home buying pre-listing. Under checklist, was it? Let's see. Okay, here we go. So it's under checklist Valentine. And then if you go all the way down, pre-listing package North Carolina.
There you go.
Does everybody see it? I know that's quite a few steps, so I'll be happy to email it to you. But again, it's under Market Center. Once you get in there, under documents, and then there's a ton of documents. And under checklist Valentine, there's 21 documents. And if you look to the second to the last one, that is your pre-listing. That's what I'm using to go over right now.
Wouldn't it be easier to add this form to the resource folder that we were just in? It takes like 2 clicks to get to.
I guess it would. Honestly, I don't put them into places. So that's certainly something I'll bring up to see if this one, honestly, I looked under KW resources first too. So it would be easier just to put it over there. I'm sure we can easily do that.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Because you're right. That would certainly be easier than everything that I just had to show you. All right, the next section, what you're going to collect from the seller. Again, I'm assuming we got the listing appointment here and we're signing. We're going to get the residential property disclosures filled out, mineral and oil, lead-based only if it's built before 1978, septic or sewer agent discovery. Okay, this one is under the KW resource page. And I'll go over that with you. And this kind of came up, I believe, I don't know the whole story, Saber told me, but I believe someone listed a property. They thought it was hooked up to the union or county water and sewer. And come to find out, by the time the buyer came in, they went under contract, they figured out it was a septic. Okay, which is obviously something that's going to be a problem. So the reason this form was created so that we are verifying when we're listing it, is this septic or are they getting it from the county, the water? Okay, there's two ways that form lets us figure this out. One, we call Union County, water and find out, is this property, this address hooked up to Union County water and sewer. Okay. I have to, I then say to the representative, thank you for your help. Can you give me your name? Because I got to put on the form who I spoke with. 9 times out of 10, they only give you their first name, some rule they have. But anyway, that's one way. The other way is to ask your seller for a water bill. Okay. So obviously if they got Union County or Mecklenburg County water and sewer, they're going to have a water bill, and I can attach that to my septic or sewer discovery form and fill it out and say, yes, I've confirmed it. It's basically us agents verifying that, and it's the listing agent that really has to verify that. The buyer agent doesn't have to sign this, but we have to sign it saying we have confirmed it's either septic or it is hooked up to Union County or Mecklenburg or whatever county water company. So basically what Saber was accomplishing here is making sure that when we list something, there's not a septic tank back there and we don't know about it and we're disclosing it improperly. Because in the MLS, you have to disclose what your water and sewer source is, whether you have a well and septic tank or whether you're hooked up to city or county. Okay. And again, I'll go right back into that form a little more for you when we get to the forms. Let's see, I've already talked about that. Here's another couple of things that, and again, keep this list with you. You want to get a copy of the covenant restrictions in a neighborhood. This is very important. I'll tell you a quick story back when this was years ago. I had a client and I knew she had a dog. Okay. I had no idea what kind of dog, but she would bring it along. I couldn't really tell, but she would bring it along, keep it in the back seat. So her dog was her baby. So this was out in Curitan, if y'all are familiar with that, out in Waxhaw. And one of the neighborhoods there, I made sure before we made an offer to get the covenant and restrictions from the listing agent. She didn't have it attached to the MLS, but I called her and said, hey, I really need to look through those for my buyer, before they move forward. And one of the reasons I really thought about it was I knew that her husband worked in a business where he had a truck he took home. In many of these neighborhoods, that's a restriction. You can't park a work vehicle. You know, there's a lot of restrictions they need to know about and make sure it fits in with their lifestyle. But here's what happened with this one. When I got to the section where they talked about animals, obviously it said no hens, no chicken, all that, because we're in a neighborhood. But it also had a clause about dogs. And what it said is that you cannot have a dog that's a pit bull, Rottweiler, or even a mix of pit bull. Well, come to find out, I did bring this to my attention to my client, and she said, mine is a mix of pit bull and boxer. Well, she couldn't have that dog in that neighborhood if she bought that house. And you can imagine how upset she would have been with me had she bought the house and had to get rid of a dog, right? That was like their baby. So it's very important. And I think this is kind of undervalued sometimes, of looking and sending these covenant restrictions to your clients before they make an offer in a neighborhood. Now, as a listing agent, you need to get the copy of this and attach it again to your MLS. All this is attached as a PDF, right? Under attachments. So you're going to have things like the survey. If I have a survey, it's going to go there. All my disclosures, my MOG, my covenant restrictions, bylaws, anything I can find on that neighborhood. Now, most of the time as a listing agent, you need to tell the seller to get that from the HOA company, because they will charge you for it if it's ordered by someone other than the homeowner. Okay. So I always get the homeowner to get me a copy, or sometimes, obviously, if there's a lot of listings in that neighborhood and I can find an updated one on another attachment, I'll look through and make sure that's the most updated and use that. But nevertheless, it's very important not to disregard covenant restrictions, because it may not fit with your client's lifestyle. Okay. Copy of the deed or deed of trust. Now, most of the attorneys, once the house goes under contract, the attorney does title work, and that's where they're pulling the deed. They do all that work, but it never hurts if you can pull a deed just to make sure that the owner's names, the same ones that are on the deed, are actually also the ones you're putting on your listing agreement. Don't go by the tax records. I know Saber brought this up in one of her classes, that you just assume that the tax record is the owner, but that is really who's paying the tax bill. And she told the story of a seller that wanted to sell the house, but it actually belonged to her mother, who was deceased, like, I want to say it was like 25 years prior. But that daughter did not have the right to sell the property. She did keep paying the taxes on it, so that's why her name was in the tax records. But come to find out, there was not a will or any kind of documentation done to this estate to give her the right to sell. So that's the reason, you know, looking at the deed is a very good idea. But again, generally the attorney does do that first thing, pulls the deeds, the records, and of course, make sure there's clean title on your home. Now, that is something that I ask in a listing appointment. You know, do you know of any tax liens, anything that will be on your title that will prohibit? And that's part of the listing agreement. But, you know, there have been cases where people said no, and then all of a sudden the attorney calls and says, hey, there's a, you know, $100,000 tax lien on this property, meaning it can't be sold to that buyer until that tax lien is paid off by the seller. So in other words, at closing, they would have to come up with that $100,000 just to sell the property. Does that make sense? So a lot of stuff like that you have to think about. Copy of a survey. I always ask the seller, do you have a copy of the survey? Now, keep in mind, if a survey is really old, you know, not the last couple of years or whatnot, I'm gonna use the survey and say thank you, but may attach it because that's all I have. But I am going to make sure that the buyer's agent understands they can't rely on that. So typically, if a seller does not have a survey, it is a buyer cost to go get a survey if they want one. The seller does not have to go pay for a survey and get one. but I always ask for it, because if they do happen to have one, I just bought the house a couple of years ago, or they put up a fence and they just had it done, great. I may be saving the buyer some money on getting a survey to show any, easements or encroachments. That's why they're important. But again, I don't want the liability of that survey because the seller provided it, but I'm providing it to them. If it's older, I'm gonna say, hey, this may not be reliable. If they change something, or a neighbor built the fence over their line, or something else happened in the meantime. So just keep that in mind, but definitely ask for one. Also ask if they have any recent appraisals, okay? Now I like to have that just to get good information. Also, the measurements, they're usually very extensive, but one of the reasons we ask for it is, let's say the seller was trying to sell the house before you came along and they got an FHA offer, okay? And let's say obviously an appraisal was done during that period they were trying to sell, but the deal fell apart, okay? It never closed, but there was an appraisal done. Well, for FHA, it's going to stick in the system for up to 6 months, okay? Actually, I thought it was 4, but I have heard up to 6 months, meaning that if they show me an appraisal and it's 330,000 and it's within that period of time, the next buyer, it doesn't matter if they're going to use this appraisal because it sticks in the system with FHA. So that gives me a clear indication to say, well, if we take anything over 330, it's not going to appraise. Does that make sense? So that's the reason you want to just ask and see what they have. You also, part of listing agreement, and a lot of this is in your listing agreement when you go over it. So you'll know it's going to ask them, is your property currently in a lease? Are you leasing your property? If so, I need to see that lease to see if they have the right to sell it. If they're still in a lease, then we don't have the right to sell it because there's a current lease agreement, okay? Tax bill, this is a good thing to ask for, the property tax bill. And the main reason for that is some areas will have more than one tax assessment. For example, they may be paying a county tax, but they're also paying a township tax or a city tax. Okay, well, that is something I need to disclose. Okay, so I need to just, I don't want the buyer to get to the closing, all of a sudden we realize, oh, there's another $100 a month you have to pay for another tax. So that's why I always ask for a tax bill, just to confirm, the location, if they have any extra assessment on any other tax bills. All right. All right, I'm not going to go through this part right now. Again, you'll know where that form is. I want to start going into the listing agreement and teaching you how to fill it out properly and the things that you need to ask for. Now, keep in mind when you have a listing, and this is my big speech on listings, there may be, you may get it signed, but you may not be ready to list that list that house quite yet. Now, a lot of times sellers will say, well, I need to paint this, or you have given them some recommendation, Mr. Seller, I really recommend you first repair the rotting wood. If there's a big stain on the ceiling from a previous leak, you obviously want to have that repainted so that a buyer is not going to go, oh my God, there's a leak, especially if it was previous and they knew about it and they just didn't fix the paint. So there's a lot of reasons that, it may get delayed. You're not quite ready to list tomorrow, but you want to go ahead and clench that listing agreement so it's yours, but you're not quite ready. This is where the coming soon comes in. I love that because now I have up to 21 days to get the house where I need it to make sure. And here's a big thing, use a professional photographer to do your photos, okay? A lot of these good photographers are time out, like they may be a week or 2 out. You do not want to take iPhone pictures of a home that you're selling, okay? Everybody knows all buyers are going where on their first search for a home? Online, okay? Pictures are so important. I have seen these horrible pictures that are dark. They may have a picture of a sink or a toilet, just not representing that property. That is my biggest advice. Hire a professional photographer that is going to have the professional equipment, the wide lens to make every room look great. I want that house to look online like a magazine. I want it better than when people walk in, because that is your resource of pulling in your buyers. If you have bad presentation online, that is just not doing justice for your seller. Okay. Again, I always hire a professional photographer. It may cost me $250, $300 depending on the size and all. That's so well worth it. That is what I need to spend to hopefully get more listings too, because now I can use it as a resume. I even take it as far as, once I do use my professional photographer, I'm going to create a professional brochure. And let me stop share a minute to kind of show you that. For example, this is a brochure I do for the homes from, hold on, that was the wrong one. Excuse me. Give me 1 second. Okay, here's an example for it. So the professional pictures I use, I'm now creating a professional brochure for that home. And you would not believe how many listings I think I win just because I show them this magazine-like brochure. This may not sell their house, but I'm telling them that I'm going to, use this to advertise. I'm going to have it at their home, because many home buyers are coming alone, flying in from out of state. Their wife or husband aren't here. So now they got a professional brochure with all the pictures. And at the back, I've got all the the floor plan, all the disclosures. They can take this home with them, and I feel it's great representation. Now, the downfall of this is, in this market, I don't even get to the point of getting them printed. Obviously I have to first get my professional photos done before I do this, but now I got to get this brochure created and printed. And usually by that time, the property has sold in this market. In the old days, where, average days on the market used to be 180 days, great value, because now I'm constantly marketing with more materials and more, I used to send it to the Chamber of Commerce or send it to other agencies to promote my property. But unfortunately these days, well, not unfortunately, fortunately, they sell quick, and I'm not usually at this point. But the professional photography is still my best and biggest recommendation to make sure that you are representing your seller properly and their home by using a professional. Okay. Same thing with using professional measurement. This is just something you're going to need to spend as a listing agent. You're not driving buyers around and spending a lot of gas for sellers. So this is where your cost comes in to make sure you're listing that home properly. All right. And I won't go much into my staging, but I do give complimentary staging to some degree, where I don't want those yucky towels in the bathroom. I want white, crisp ones. I want nice bed covers. I do have limited inventory where I can go in and spruce up their home with arrangements, photos, whatever I need to do to make it look better. I go in and say, okay, we need to declutter all this. And now I'm going to come in and do some limited staging, is what I call it, because I don't import beds. I do have a sofa, but I don't want to be in the moving business, but I do want to make that house pop and make it look like I want it to look in the photography, so I can sell it quickly. So I, have saved stuff from Home Goods. I have a little storage building that I keep all my staging items. And it has been one of the most productive ways to sell a home, and sellers love it, because some sellers have no mindset of, decorating or presentation. Not that it's bad, it's just they don't have that eye. And I know what I need to make it look like to make the pictures look good. I need to know what it looks like when buyers come in, that they're going, wow, this is nice. And it doesn't take that much. It just takes some sprucing up. If somebody has an old red bed cover, It's not what I want in my picture. I want a nice white one. I want a nice, beautiful pillows decorating it, you know, with a wine glass sitting there. I want to make it look like a model home as much as I can. So that's just my little flip on that. Getting back to forms. Let me get back to that. I'm going to go straight into the listing agreement because I want you to see. Let's see, hold on, I'm sorry, where is it? Here it is. Give me 1 second and I'll get there. Any questions so far before I start on the listing agreement? Okay. And keep in mind, when you're doing business, you can do it any way you want. You can charge for staging if you wanted to. You know, again, this is just something my partner and I, Alicia, came up with because it benefited us in selling more homes quicker. And it's almost like, you know, how you walk into a house and you go, oh, I'm going to sell this, but you see all these things that you want to change. Well, this gives you that capability and sellers love it. I mean, why wouldn't you? If someone is offering to come in and make your house look that much better, why not? All right, now I'm going to go straight into the listing agreement. Thank you for your patience while I get there. All right, let me share this. Share. All right, do y'all see the listing agreement? Okay. Hey, keep in mind too, and this is something some agents didn't know even existed, our exclusive right to sell listing agreement, along with many others, even offer to purchase, they have some guidelines. That's another form, like Form 101G is basically some guidelines to tell you how to fill it out. It's usually right underneath the form. So when you find the form in your DocuSign or .loop, you'll find the form, and right underneath it, you'll find guidelines. So use that, especially if you get stuck at first. Okay. Can everybody see the exclusive right to sell? Just one person tell me yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure. All right, we'll start off right at the top. And again, make sure you're always using the correct form. So this is Form 101. Okay, revised 7/2021. Okay, you would not believe sometimes from these other agencies that when I get an offer, they're sending me last year's. Just they never updated their files, or I don't know if their office didn't, but that's like taking something that's null and void. So I've made it a habit now to look at my dates, make sure I'm always using the right forms, and the forms that are coming in are always the correct ones, because they change every year. Every July is when the commission comes out and we have all these form changes because of whatever happened in the year that they're trying to make better or change or, you know, put in new rules. So obviously at the very top, the seller's name. Keep in mind, if you have a seller that's married, they will both need to be on here, okay? North Carolina is a marital state. Even if they're divorced, but yet they're not I should say separated, but they're not legally divorced, you still have to get both signatures. Does that make sense? Because we're a marital state and it takes 2 to sell, okay, if they're married. So always keep that in mind. Then the property obviously is between the seller and the firm, not your name here. This is Keller Williams Ballantyne area, or some people put Keller Williams Realty, but I always choose to put Keller Williams Ballantyne area, okay, or Keller Williams Ballantyne. So it's between the firm, you're representing the firm, but it's between the firm and the seller. In other words, a listing belongs to the firm, okay? That's why if you leave a firm, technically the firm could retain that listing because it's not yours. It's between the firm and the seller. You're representing Keller Williams Ballantyne as the agent representing the firm. All right. This is where I already discussed this about if someone is deceased, you know, the tax records may always be right. So make sure that, you know, you determine, and again, this will show up on a deed, but if you have any questions about it, you know, your attorney should be able to help you with that. But you know, if it hasn't gone out, if it's a estate or hasn't been allocated by a will, then that party may not have the right. Okay. Obviously, you've already gone over the working with real estate agents with the seller. That's the very first thing I do. And again, I even mentioned to them, you know, do not disclose to me any confidential information that you don't want me to know, because, you know, I don't have the listing yet. In that case, if I don't have the listing agreement, and they choose another agent, I already know, maybe they say, oh, they're divorced, I'll take anything that you can get me. You know, those are things they don't want to share at this point, and I let them know that. Okay. Term of agreement. You can have a term of agreement any length you want. I mean, we used to have the mindset, hey, I need at least 6 months. That's a general still rule of thumb, 6 months. And the reason is, if somebody says, well, I just want a month. Well, I'm not going to waste my time and money on getting photography and paying for it, getting it measured, doing all this work. And if it doesn't sell in a month, I get nothing. Okay. So that's why I've always told people, you know, I need, to be fair, I need 6 months. Now that was in a normal market. Now you could probably take a listing for a month and sell it. But the point is, you want to be smart about what you're taking. And if someone is, you know, trying to say, oh, I only want you for a month, they don't have much faith or trust in you. I have done a 3 months just because that seller could not comprehend past that. But I knew I could sell it quickly. You know, I studied the home. This was before this market, but still, I knew the home, the neighborhood would sell quick. I looked at days on the market. So I went ahead and took the risk there. Okay. But generally, I want a 6 months agreement. Now, and again, in the old days, if I took $1 million+ listing, I always asked for a year because it was harder to sell a $1 or $2 million home. There's less pool of buyers. And plus, I'm going to spend a lot more money. I usually do on $1 million home because now I'm going to go and do the drone. I want to do anything I can to get the most exposure, but I'm spending more money. But again, in the old days, it could take you a year to sell a really high-end home like that, only because there's a lot more pool of buyers in the 300 to 500 range there are in $1 million+. Okay. Again, these days that has kind of changed. I mean, you're even seeing new construction builders calling for best and highest on inventory homes. It's a whole different market. And even the $1 million+ are definitely, days on the market is a lot less than it used to be because the lack of inventory and amount of buyers we have out there. Okay. But again, my rule of thumb is at least 6 months. If I am listing a very high end that I think might take longer for any reason, I'm going to ask for a year. The worst they can say is no, right? But I also make them feel comfortable at my listing appointment saying, look, if at any time you're not happy with my services or for any reason like that, that you are not happy with me, I'm going to let you out of this agreement because I want them to be happy with me. That's not happened. And I tell them that, which I feel very fortunate, because I know I'm going to retain them by giving them great service, but at least it doesn't make them feel like they are so locked in sometimes. You really have to be a psychologist in this business too. And you're going to meet so many variants of people and mindset. And some people are just very fearful of signing things without even having their attorney look at it. I mean, I get that sometimes where they say, well, we want our attorney to look at it first. That's fine. But the bottom line, I want them to understand, I want to sell your home. You know, you're not going to sign this and I go away. I'm going to be right here holding your hand through this whole process. I guarantee you will not be unhappy with my services. But if you ever are, I'm obviously going to do the right thing. And I don't want somebody working with me that don't want to work with me, right? So, but anyway, this is where you're going to put that expiration date. The very first box, the effective date, shall be when it's signed by both seller and firm. And remember, if you're not doing coming soon and you're ready to go tomorrow or whatever, you have 1 business day to get that into MLS once it is fully executed, meaning both you and the seller have signed. Okay. But again, now we're seeing a lot of people aren't ready, and this is what I'm going to teach you about. I don't really want to go too much into the second part where the property is currently listed with another real estate firm, because this Article 16 Code of Ethic is kind of like something that we're kind of breaking by doing that. So I don't get involved with that. If someone calls me and says, I'm unhappy with my listing agent, I want to hire you, will you come over? I'm going to get them to get a termination of their agency agreement. I am not going to step in until they have a termination, because that is ethically not what we're supposed to do. And so that's how I handle that. Okay. Even with a buyer that calls me and said, I'm not happy with my buyer's agent. Well, you're going to have to get a termination of agency. I can't show you property or advise you, do anything, and because you are under an agency agreement. Okay. Expiration date. Again, you can put whatever expiration date you want. Now, sometimes if I'm doing normally I do 6 months, like I said, but let's say I'm doing coming soon for 21 days. I'm going to add that 21 days because I'm not really marketing it until I go active. So I might go 6 months and 21 days or whatever you want there. Okay. But that is where you are saying this is when this agreement expires. Now, keep in mind, let's say it's about to expire. Let's say it's going to expire next week and you just got a contract on it. I mean, literally just got it a week before your agreement expires, but it's not closing for another 30 days, which is after my expiration. That doesn't matter. As long as you have it under contract while this is not expired, it's fine. You don't have to extend that date. Does that make sense? In other words, even with a buyer agency, same thing. If it's about to expire, but I got them under contract, but I know it's not going to close for a year because they're getting new construction, it's okay, because as long as the contract was signed at the time that my buyer agency or listing agreement is valid, I'm good. I don't have to extend that date to the close date. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, property information, obviously address, city, county, zip code. But let me show you where you're going to find the legal stuff. And again, I fill all this out before I go to listing appointment. This is all filled out. I don't have to sit there and fill it out. I'm only filling out things that I can't fill out yet without the seller, but I can fill all this out now or before I go. And let me show you where you get that from to help you out there a little. Let me move this. Sorry, this always takes me a minute. Okay. Oh, I know I downloaded that one. Hold on. Tax record. Well, I thought I did. Let me check this. Date modified. Here we go. All right, do y'all see this tax record? You are screen sharing. Let's see, let me share it again, so make sure you get it. All right, you see the tax record right there, guys? Does everybody see this? Just give me a thumbs up if you see it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Thank you. All right, so this is where we get our information to fill out the listing agreement. Okay, oh, why can I not scroll? Hold on a minute. Let me move this over here. All right. All right, obviously, you know, again, this is where the names of the sellers are. And normally, you know, again, if I'm
Connie,
unsure, yeah, go ahead.
Where did you find that? I could see it.
Oh,
But
what? This would be under realist. Do you know how to get to that?
No.
Okay, let me show you.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem at all. So this is actually, you go to the MLS to find this. So let me do that. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Share screen. Boom. All right, so let me sign in. So you're gonna sign into the MLS. Now, there's two easy ways to get this off the MLS. Let's say it was a property that was already in the MLS at some point. So I'm gonna go to Matrix. Sorry. Okay. So this is something I love teaching because some people do not know about this. Hold on, let me get it. All right. You know, when you go into Matrix, now you could just go under public records and go to realist. That is one simple way, and I'll show you that in a minute. But let's say he calls me, hey, I want you to list my house. The first thing I'm gonna do anyway, I'm gonna look up that house, but I'm gonna look up that house in this box. You do not want to do a search residential because whatever, when I put this house in, it's gonna pull it up anytime it was in the MLS history, whether it was for rent, whether it was for sale, whether it was drawn. It's basically pulling up, look how many times this has been in the MLS. Okay, this is the first thing I do if someone wants to buy a house or sell their house. I want to see if I can find the old listing. This is how I can gather information on it, right? Now, again, it goes way back, even to the 1990s or whatever it was. So here it was drawn quite a few times, expired, and it's closed this many times. And you can also see it was rented. See right here, rent, RNT. So I know it was rented. But the point is, every time it was put into MLS, whether it was for selling it, renting it, whatever, this is going to pull it up, the whole history. This is the only way you're going to pull this up. So I'm going to go to the most recent time that it sold, which I can look down here and see, okay, this just sold recently, okay? So, two ways I can get to, and actually this was my listing, so you can see there, but this is, remember I told y'all you need to attach everything to the MLS. When you list a house, you need to list all disclosures. This is where you do it. You go to attachments here. Well, this is where you can find it, okay? But this is what I entered. This is what I had. I had floor plan and measurements. I had the disclosures, the MOG. I had the CCRs. I had some bylaws. So I had all that in there for agents to get to. So if they want to make an offer, hey, they can send this real quick to the CCR, say, hey, you want to look through this before you make an offer? They can also send them measurements. Hey, here's the floor plan. And hey, here's the disclosures. How old is the HVAC? How old's the roof? All this will be on the disclosures, okay? So that's the important reason a buyer needs to look at those disclosures. That should tell them, and make sure when you're a listing agent, I make sure that my seller discloses what stage of your roof, okay? If they don't know, I'm gonna try to figure it out. What do you think it is approximately, even if I put approximately, okay? I wanna know how old is the HVAC? That's on the property disclosure, because guess what? A buyer's agent, when they pull that up and they see that it's original unit that's 20 years old, that maybe make their offer less strong than if it's brand new units, right? Because we all know they last about 20, 25 years, if that. So that's why it's important for you to make sure to have the seller make sure to list all that on the property disclosure. This is what buyers agents want to see to tell their people. All right, going back to what I was doing, the tax records are right underneath the property where it says TX. That's one quick way of pulling up, like if I'm researching the property, I'm gonna pull up the tax records. They're always gonna be updated. Just because this was sold 10 years ago, it's updated tax records when you click on the TX. It's not from 10 years ago. Does that make sense? Continually updated. The other way that you can find it, real simple. Trying to move this. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Matrix. Move this thing up. There we go. Let me go back to criteria. I'm gonna go back to the home screen. Oh, it was right there. I'm sorry, I could have done it from right there. Public records, okay? Simply, you can go to matrix text that will realist. I like to use realist. And by the way, you can also find covenant restrictions for most of the Mecklenburg County homes right here. You just put in the subdivision and some of them are there, okay? So going back to realist tax records, you just pull this up. And let's say your property had never been listed, you can't find the house, whatever. So you just go by either the last and first name of the owner or the street address. All you need is the number and the street address, and then hit search. Just keep one thing in mind. You got to make sure you got the counties checked that you usually work in, because if my property's in Union County and I don't have that checked, it's not going to pull it up. Okay, so what you can do, you can go through there and check the counties that you would like to have your default. See, I got that over here on selected counties. These are my default counties, and hit apply. And then you don't have to go do that every time. It's already going to have most of the counties in your area that you probably work in. All right, so now I just put in the street address and hit search. And there it is. Okay. There's your tax records. All right, now I'm going to show you what you're going to need for the listing agreement. You're usually going to use this portion right here where it says tax information. Parcel ID is one of the things we have to have on the listing agreement. Okay, let me go back to it on the other screen here so we can go through that with you. All right, let's say, for example, I come down to this part. Obviously, you can get everything off the tax record, street address, city, county, blah, blah, blah. Legal descriptions, okay? First of all, I need the lot or unit. Now, unit would be if you're selling a condo, okay? That's not going to be applicable if you're selling a house. A lot would be, okay? Because it sits on a lot. So now I'm going to go back to my tax records. If I can find it. There we go. And I'm gonna look right here, lot number 54. Beautiful. Okay, so I just go over and put lot 54. All right. The next thing it's going to ask me, block or section. Now, we'll tell you that's not always going to be there. Rarely are you going to find the tax records to say what block. That was more an obsolete thing, but I'm still going to check. If it has a block, I'll put a block. If it doesn't, I won't. All right. It does not. See how you have all it. There's no block or section. Okay. So I'm not going to worry about that. Now, sometimes on the legal description, we'll have block or section, like it'll say block 2. So if I find it there, I can put it there. But if you don't have it there, you don't put it. Oh, sorry. I meant to go back to this. All right. So I have a habit. If I don't have anything there, I'm going to put NA. I don't like to leave blanks. Subdivision or condominium subdivision, that's going to be on your tax records as well. So this neighborhood is called Blackstone. Okay, so I'm just simply going to write in Blackstone where it says subdivision. Okay. All right. Next thing, we don't work with plats. Okay, always, this is always going to be not applicable, always. This does not pertain to us here, okay? All right, the PIN or PID number, this is very important. This is the property identification number. It's also called PID, property identification, right, of the property. So you will find that right here, and it's a highlighted parcel ID. And when you put that in the MLS, that's also hyperlinked like that. Okay. So this is your parcel ID. Put it exactly how you see it. 06-048-118. Okay. That is your property ID right here. Other description. I wish it said legal, but this is where we put the legal description. You just make a note to yourself. Other description is always the legal description, which again, legal description right under tax information. And you know, one easy thing you can do that I do, it's a long one. I just highlight it, copy it, go back to my form and copy and paste and look how, then I have to worry about going back and forth. Did I do that right? Did I not? But anyway, that's where you put your legal description, exactly the whole 20 numbers if it is, or letters and numbers. Sometimes it's very long, sometimes it's not. But whatever it is on the tax records is what you need to put under other for legal description. Okay. The next part is, where is it recorded right now in the book and page at the courthouse? Remember how I told you when you close at settlement, it then goes to be recorded at the courthouse? Well, this is asking where and what book and page is it recorded at the courthouse? Okay, so all you got to do is go back to the tax records and scroll down under last market sales history. Okay, this is where it's going to tell you right now it's recorded on book 8333, page 94. Okay, when the seller previously bought it, it was book 5542, page 836. So the first set of numbers, which is usually longer, are always your book. The last 3 digits or 2 digits, whatever it is your page. Okay, so you are simply going to then go in here and say it's in book, and I'm just making it up, 833, page 569. Okay, any questions on that? So this is how you fill out the legal part. And of course, your street address and all that, that's from the tax records as well. No questions on that part? Okay. All right, so let's see, so residential under contract, minimize potential dispute. Okay, now one thing you need to be familiar with and talk to your sellers about is that most of the home, most of the items in the home that we consider fixed items are listed here. Okay, in other words, in North Carolina, if you sell a house, anything that's fixed to the property, bolted to the property, like the light fixtures, anything that's attached stays with the property and it's part of the price. Okay, there's a few exceptions, and the most common ones that are not fixed in North Carolina that you might think, or a buyer would think is a refrigerator and washer and dryer. Those are considered what we call personal items. Okay, in other words, when you list the property for $300,000, that doesn't automatically include the refrigerator, washer and dryer, because those are considered personal, just like a TV, just like the furniture. Okay, so you do have to explain that to your seller in North Carolina, because that's not, something they would automatically know. But for example, your stove top, your built-in appliances, your microwave, all that is fixed. They cannot remove that or replace it with something else. So let's say that your seller says, well, I have a chandelier that belonged to my great-grandmother in my foyer. I don't want that to go. I know it's a fixed item, but I want that. That's fine. We can go into this listing agreement and list it as an exclusion. Okay. In other words, we'll also do that in the MLS. We're going to say, chandelier does not convey. So as long as I'm excluding it, it's okay, as long as I'm disclosing it in the MLS to all agents when they're showing the property. Now, what I really prefer and what I say to my sellers most of the time is, if there's a lot of items like that, I say, why don't you just take it down? Let's replace it with something different. And that way they're not expecting that to be there. You know what I mean? Maybe that's something they fell in love with right when they walked in the door. Well, to me, it's easier if it's already been replaced with another fixture. There's no question. They're getting that fixture there. And most of the time I tell my sellers, you need to replace it with something. You just don't want to have an empty foyer with no lighting, obviously. But anyway, so read through these carefully and understand. For example, a basketball goal, you know how you have the ones that have wheels on it and they're that little tight material. If it has wheels on it, it's not fixed. They can take it. That's a seller's property. But if it's cemented into the ground, like most of them are, that's fixed. They cannot take it. Okay. Same with, plants. If it's in a pot, they can take it. But if it's planted in the ground, I did have a client say, we planted this when my wife died. I want to take that crepe myrtle or whatever it was. Then I'm gonna go ahead and tell them, let's just go ahead and get it up and move it. Or if that doesn't work for him, I will just put it in as exclusion. At least the buyer and the buyer agent know that does not convey with the property. That's an exclusion with the listing agreement. Okay. But of course, all blinds stay. If you're ever not sure, just carefully study this. And the thing is, you're supposed to leave the rods because they are bolted in, right? With the curtains don't convey, that's personal, but actually the rods, if they're bolted into the wall, they should be fixed items. They should stay. Okay. So this is where I go to the page and explain it to the seller and say, these are all fixed items. We'll have a good long conversation about this. And then we talk about, are there any items that you leased? I know in the old days, they used to lease the equipment from the security systems, and they didn't really own them. So they couldn't, convey them. So if they do have anything like that, I mean, believe it or not, some people even lease washer and dryers or an appliance. Well, washer and dryer wouldn't matter because they don't convey anyway. But if it's something they're leasing that should be fixed, you need to make sure it's listed here. And it's kind of rare these days, to be honest with you, because even the security systems are now mostly the ones, that they buy and take with them, like the Ring and all that. But let's say that your seller says, I don't want to move this refrigerator. I don't want to move the washer and dryer. I want it to be part of what is transferred at no value to the to the buyer. This is where you would then list refrigerator, washer and dryer. Okay. And then you would put it in the MLS under the equipment to show me that those are included. Okay. But the thing you got to make sure of is when they send you the offer to purchase, that they include it on the offer as a personal item. Because if they don't, this doesn't do us a lot of good, right? But most of the time, I try to recommend to my sellers, why don't we keep it a negotiable item? Because there is some good value to, a nice stainless steel refrigerator, newer washer and dryer. Let's leave it open for negotiation, meaning a buyer may come in and say, okay, I'm gonna pay you this much for your house, but I would like to ask for the refrigerator and the washer and dryer to be included. But now it's not automatically conveyed at no value. Now it's more negotiable item where the seller might say, okay, well, for another $2,000, I'll leave them. So you're making it a negotiable item. Because a lot of times sellers don't really want to take that refrigerator because it may not match their new appliance package in a new home, or the washer and dryer is kind of older, they're going to get a new one. Whatever the reason may be, keeping it negotiable really does help the seller, unless he's just adamant or she's adamant about, I don't want to move them. Can you make sure they take them? But again, it's personal items. So if the buyer says, no, I don't want that crappy refrigerator, then it is still the responsibility of the seller to remove it, because part of contract is you have to remove all personal items before closing and all debris. When I say debris, they can't leave a bunch of wood underneath a deck or an old bike, meaning they got to get everything out of the property at the time we're getting ready to close, all furniture, all debris, and, have the property nice and clean. All right. Home warranty. Make sure, now home warranties are still very favorable to most buyers. They love them. Okay. They do have the option to ask for them on the offer to purchase. So a lot of times they will ask for them, but not so much in this market, because they're trying to bring a strong offer that has, clean offers, what we call it, where they're not asking for a bunch of stuff. But you as a listing agent, and I always bring this up to my sellers, if I'm listing an older house in 1978 and I'm looking in a crawl space and I'm looking at how the house was maybe not maintained so well, I may suggest, Mr. Seller, I think it'd be a good idea to offer home warranty as your house is older, and this is going to give some confidence and some assurance to a buyer. And these plans can vary. They're usually $400 to $700 depending what level of home warranty. But basically what they're saying, if they agree to it, is they're going to buy a home warranty for the buyer that is good from closing for 1 year. That's it, just for 1 year. So basically they don't have to pay for it up front. It'll just be taken out of their profit at the closing table where they're buying the home warranty for the buyer. It'll be a debit on the seller's profit side. And then the seller, and then they're buying that warranty. Now, one thing I would suggest, and I won't go into this long because I know we're on a time crunch more or less, but a wise decision, 210 does this, and I love it. I can go to my seller and say, look, your appliances are kind of old, you know, their HVAC may be older. If you want to provide a home warranty, why don't we utilize it for yourself while you are listing it with me? Okay. In other words, I can go ahead and go on 210, order them a home warranty. They're not paying a penny right now, but they're covered during the listing period. So even if you get into an inspection part, they can utilize that, you know, where all they have to do is pay $100 trade call fee and the item can be fixed. What a wonderful thing, because they're going to buy it for the buyer anyway, but now they're able to utilize it during their listing period and not pay for it until closing. Very wise decision, and I do try to bring that up. Filling out this form to where it says hereby discloses the firm that a fee will be offered to the firm for us ordering it. In other words, in the old days, I used to get $75 for ordering the home warranty, because the home warranty was basically reimbursing us for utilizing their services. That is not, we're not allowed to do that anymore. So you always put NA or 0 there. Okay, we do not get a kickback from the home warranty companies for selling their product. We don't get anything. Listing price, obviously, this is where you're going to put the listing price. And then you have to determine on this property, obviously, you can always take cash no matter what. But this is the proposed financing that you're going to put in MLS that you can take for that property. Now, I can tell you right now, if you're selling an $800,000 home, you're not going to check FHA. Okay. And the reason is FHA has a lower limit amount of where loan companies, they can only do a certain amount. And I think it's 3 something now. But the point is, someone buying an $800,000 home, they're either going to pay cash or it's going to be a conventional loan. Okay. USDA, you have to check on the USDA website to see if your property is eligible. That means it's 100% finance, but it's more for rural properties, although the line has come further in. I know on Providence Road going out of the Waxhaw, it's way closer to the city, but that basically means you need to check USDA website, put your property address in and see if it's even eligible. Okay. And then VA, that's another one that you just have to determine if you can take that for that property. But most of the high end is going to be cash or conventional. You don't want to check loan assumption, seller financing, just one of these: conventional, USDA, VA, FHA, or cash. And keep in mind, there are certain condominiums and complexes, when you list a condo, they don't allow FHA loans in there because their rental cap is too high in there. And I know I'm going into more extensive, but you always want to find out first from the HOA in these condo complexes and confirm that they allow FHA loans in there before you list and say it does, because you may not be able to take FHA loans in certain communities. Okay. Sellers agrees to pay a fee of, okay, this is where you put your commission. Now, keep in mind, the firm is charging, let's say 6% for this listing. Okay. That is what the firm is charging. On the next page is where you're saying, how much are you going to give to the buyer agent, the cooperating firm? In other words, Keller Williams getting 6%, but we're saying we're gonna give 3% to a cooperating firm. You never check the first one. We never work with subagents. So you're gonna check cooperate with buyer agents representing the buyer, and this is how much we're gonna give them. So that means you're getting 3 and the buyer agent's getting 3, okay? And you're also gonna check the last box, cooperate with other cooperating real estate firms, which we do. So check those 2 on number 8, never check the first one. Subagent, which you'll see that in MLS where it's asking you put in the commission, it's saying SA. That means subagent, you always put 0. We don't cooperate with subagents. Okay, going back up here real quick. This is basically saying that, you know, once, if we have a ready, willing, and able buyer that's procured by our firm, okay, at the price that it's listed at, okay, or any price acceptable seller, then they owe us the commission. So in other words, let's say that you get them full price and for some reason the seller's like, nah, I decided not to, they would still owe you commission because you have found them a ready, willing, and able buyer, and they agreed to the price that you had it listed at, okay? Now, that doesn't mean, and I should go more into that. That doesn't mean like in multiple offers, obviously they can take higher, but the point of that is, if we have it listed and they all of a sudden decide, oh no, I'm gonna rent it instead, and you already brought them a willing and able buyer, that's a problem. All right, right here, this is saying if the circumstances are set, if within a certain amount of days, and I like to put 90 days here, this is saying, let's say that your listing agreement has expired and you didn't sell it, but within 90 days, one of the buyers that Keller Williams or you procured to come look at the property, okay, we procured that interest for that property, and now they're waiting till it's expired and make a deal with the seller. If it's within 90 days, they still owe us the commission, okay? Does that make sense? Now, that doesn't mean if they go into another real estate firm like Allen Tate, they list it with them, then no, that they don't owe us the commission. But I'm saying if they tried just to sell it by themselves, make a deal between the buyer and the seller that you procured during your listing term, and it hasn't been more than 90 days, they owe you the real estate commission. That's to protect us from that happening. All right. I don't know how much time, so I'm trying to get the pertinent points. Everybody understand this part? So this is what you're listing. So let's say that you are reducing your commission up here and you're saying, okay, I'm gonna list your property for 5%. All right. And you're saying, okay, for the buyer agent, though, I'm gonna give them 2.5. Okay. So remember, a buyer agent never sees what you have the full commission for, because that's not listed in the MLS, but we do have to disclose what we're offering to the cooperating firm, the amount. Okay. So that's what you would put here. So this is the number you have to put in the MLS that you're offering the buyer's agent. So BA, not SA. SA, we don't offer anything, 0. And you don't have to put 0 here because you didn't check this box. We're not even making this applicable. All right. I want to bring out one thing about this, and you may have heard this. I think this is the one. No, this isn't the one. When you need to make your seller understand another thing when you're talking to them, you need to tell them that it's okay if they have video when a buyer comes through. You know how a buyer comes through and they may have their ring, or they may have a little secret camera, whatever. That is not illegal. They can videotape you in there with the buyers. However, they cannot audio tape. And I think that's still in here where it is a federal offense. You cannot audio tape. A seller cannot listen to conversations as a buyer is in their house with their agent, because they could be talking about negotiations and money and what they're offering. So I always make it a practice, to be honest with you, whether or not it's a rule or law, I'm not going to ever stay in the house and talk about pertinent things like that. I'm going to wait till we leave the house or go meet somewhere. You know, even if you're standing on the front porch, if they ring, they can hear you. So it's best practice not to be in the home during that time. I mean, not to talk about things like that during that time. Okay, I want to get in a couple of important points before we go. One of them is try to use a super key when you're a listing agent. This is a liability for your sellers. You don't want to use a combo box, okay? Number one, a buyer can watch you or can watch their buyer's agent open a combo box and see what numbers they are. Very easily done if they're not, if they have bad intentions, okay? Number two, with a super box, you can allocate how long you want it to be working. Like I have mine turned off at night. After 8 o'clock, it doesn't work, okay? Because that's a safety reason too, right? You don't want someone coming in their house. But the best part of it, it actually logs who the agent was, because they have to have a super key or the capability, right? Super to get in. So it logs who you are, your name, your ID number, what time you came in. So it's all secure. And that's why it's really important if you're showing a house and there's someone else showing you, waiting for them to come out because of COVID and you can't go in yet. Don't just walk in, make them lock it up and then you open it by yourself, because and I don't want someone, if I was just in there, I'm going to make sure it's locked, because now if something goes wrong in the next showing, I'm the last agent to show logged in. Okay, so make sure that if you're a buyer's agent showing a house, when you leave, lock it up and make that agent reopen their own box so it logs them in and you're not liable after that time. So make it a practice. I mean, you can get these super boxes reduced, I think like $60 at the realtor store. They may be up to 100 or so new, but you can also rebuy them from other agents and get everything moved over to your name and all. But it just, if you're listing a home, I think it's our responsibility for the safety of our clients and for them to feel safe. So I explained as part of my listing, hey, I'm going to make sure, you know, your safety and blah, blah, blah of your home is not jeopardized. This is why I use a super. And I explain it to them. I bring one with me and show it to them. All right, real quick. This is kind of newer, so I want to go over this part. So like I mentioned, sometimes it takes a little time to get the house on the market. You already got the listing agreement. You're not ready to put it in within that one day, okay, because you still got things to do. So I love utilizing the 21-day out coming soon. Now, you can use it for 11 days. You can use it for 7 days, but you can't go beyond 21. So I can't go 23 days out is my point. 21 days is the limit that I can go coming soon, and then it's automatically going to revert to active in the system. All right. So what it's asking here, the firm is authorized to commence property as described below, and then I'm going to put the marketing date, not the active date, but the marketing date that I'm coming soon if I utilize the coming soon. So let's say I'm meeting with them today. I don't even know the date, I think February 3rd. Let's say I'm meeting with them today and we're going to go coming soon next Monday. So that is going to be what I'm going to put for marketing date, because I am going to market once I'm coming soon. I'm going to put a sign out there. I'm going to put coming soon on top of my sign, which you have to have. I'm already going to tell everybody in the office, hey, I got one coming soon. It's on the MLS, it's coming soon. So you're technically marketing. So this date must be when you go coming soon. Does that make sense? Or if you're doing a exclusive, office exclusive, that's when you start, although you're marketing within, that's your date. Okay. Now so this is my date that I plan on coming soon. That's not my marketing date. My marketing date is going to come into play. Let's say I'm practicing coming soon. This is going to be the date that I'm going active. So 21 days later or whatever it may be. So let's say I choose 21 days later, I'm not going active till this date. okay? But this date is when I put it in the system as coming soon. This date is when it's going to go active. And this date needs to also match your coming soon form. Show you that real quick here. Gosh, this time is just flying. All right. Let me move myself over here. There we go. All right, this is the coming, you see the coming soon form? You see it here on the screen, right? All right, so,
No, I don't see it.
oh, you don't, okay, let me, oh, new share, hold on. Thank you for telling me. There we go. All right, so coming soon. So I have to have this along with the listing agreement signed by the seller that they're agreeing to utilizing coming soon. Again, it's maximum of 21 days. Most important thing you make them understand during the coming soon, no show status, you cannot let anybody in that house to look at your property, okay? If someone comes up to them because they see the sign out there coming soon, rings the doorbell, they need to tell them to call your agent. You are not allowed to show the property at this time because we are in a no-show status. All right, we're letting everybody know it's coming soon. It's a great tool in this market because, you know, people are even getting offers during the coming soon status, which you can entertain. It may not be in the best interest of your seller. You want to maybe wait in this market till you go active because you're going to get multiple offers, but you certainly do need to present and can take an offer during coming soon status. But again, they're buying it sight unseen. So as a listing agent, I tell my people, you know, I'm a little weary sometimes about taking a sight unseen because what if they come in, they decide it's not the right thing? They, you know, they're in New York. They've seen it online. They haven't really seen the neighborhood, the yard, what it may be. So it makes me a little more hesitant. One thing I will ask for is a very, very strong due diligence fee. I mean, it's got to be really over the top for me to say, oh, I advise you take it off for this one, you know, because at least then if they come and they don't like it, seller's got a bunch of money in his pocket, right? But the point is, just try to, I mean, it's up to the seller. I mean, they can take anything they want. We can only advise them, even in multiple offer situation. They don't have to go into multiple offers they don't want to, but you need to advise them accordingly because that's what's important. So make sure they understand they're signing this, that they will be fined if you let somebody in your house. I actually had a house that I was going to do coming soon, but then I realized they're going to have an estate sale. Okay. And I luckily thought, no, I can't do coming soon because you're having an estate sale and people are going to come in your property. You know, they may be coming for a estate sale, but same thing. I'm letting people in the estate sale. So I had to wait until after the estate sale was over before I could go coming soon or even do anything. Does that make sense? And there are rules if you violate that you will be charged for violation of letting someone in that house, because what they don't want is you let one person in and now it makes it unethical. They've seen the house, they can make an offer. That's a problem. So it's more to get it out there as a coming soon. And I will say too, I try during my coming soon, if I can have professional pictures already, great. If not, at least get some pictures of the exterior of the home and maybe some of the perks, like if it has a beautiful backyard with a pool. I want to put as much as I can on coming soon. I don't understand why an agent will put no picture on there for coming soon. That's not even attracting anybody because there's no picture. You need to put a picture in there during coming soon to start enticing people to get ready for when you are going active. They're going to be super excited. Now, if I can get the whole photographer thing and done before coming soon, that's what I do. So I can have, you know, my listing looking superb during that coming soon status. But if I can't, because they're repainting the kitchen or whatever it may be, I'm at least going to make sure I get as many good pictures as I can of the exterior, anything that I can provide to attract buyers. Active date right here. This is where you're going to put that active date, not the marketing date, right? But the active date is the same as when you are going to be going active during the coming soon status. So that's why I'm saying on the listing agreement where it says coming soon date, that is the same date you want to put here. The marketing date is just saying, when are you going to be coming soon? So everybody understand that? I know that has been confusing. It's confusing to me, but right here, I'll go back to it one more time. Marketing date here is going to be when you're coming soon, if you're using the coming soon, right? And then when you get down to the coming soon, the active date is the same as the active date on your form, the coming soon form. Anybody, any questions on that? Guys, I'd love to go on and on with this, but unfortunately our time is up. But feel free to call me if you have any questions, or if you're getting ready to go to a listing appointment, you've never done it and you're not sure, I am happy to sit down with you and just help you through the process and get you ready. You're never alone with Keller Williams. You have so many people that will help you, and I don't mind taking the time to make sure you understand what you're doing before you go and that you filled out your forms correctly. That's what we do. We help each other. So please don't hesitate to call or email me. And if you want me to email you any of these forms that you can't find, please do so, and I'll be more than happy to help you.
Where are these Canopy forms? Are they, they're obviously in Canopy, but
No, actually, you're talking about the coming soon?
yeah, like this one that you have up right now, coming soon from
Oh,
Canopy.
yes,
MLS
now
Canopy.
that one is in our office resource one.
Oh, okay. All right.
I know it's confusing because they're kind of everywhere, but this is actually under here. Now it might be, I think it might be in your regular forms too. I just used to accessing it from here.
Okay.
But yeah, see, it's got the, it's even got the sample forms, although you could get it in your form file. And I
Mhm.
believe the Canopy one may be in there as well, but here it is, coming soon, right there. So yeah, if you ever don't find anything in your forms, look under this resource, KW resource, and Sabre has done a great job of putting, or whoever did this, of putting a lot of the forms on here for us for quick access.
Now, are you doing the class next week too?
You know, I think they may have, I'll have to check. I'm not real sure if I'm doing it next week or if they have somebody else allocated.
Yeah, I was just want to make sure that I have everything printed before the class starts. So, because I have most of them printed today, but like this one I don't have. So I just want to make sure I have everything.
Yeah, and if I were you, I would go over to the checklist that we talked about at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And on, oops, here it is. And on the, let me find it real quick. Buyer listing, there it is. Stop share, let me share it again. Share screen. Okay. You know, pull all these forms, whether it be from your resource or, you know, obviously all these exclusive right will all be in there in your file documents of forms. I'm assuming using DocuSign.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I got most of them, but there were a few
yes
that
like
I noticed I did not have, like the Canopy MLS one.
Okay, yes, go to KW resource and print those, and I would just print all these forms.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe make notes on them and make sure you understand them.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what I did at the beginning, just compiled my forms and tried to memorize them. And like I say, if you have a listing coming up very soon or an appointment or something, you need extra help, feel free to reach out to me. I mean, there's, like I said, we are a helpful office in that way. We want to see everybody succeed, and we're all new at one time, and there's nothing worse than going to a listing appointment or a buyer consultation and feeling like you're not prepared and you don't really understand it. So
yeah,
feel free to reach out. We are here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else have any questions? I don't know if I have any. Where do I find North Carolina? Okay, we already talked about that. Can you send an email with all appropriate links for us? Yes, I could. I just need to find out exactly. I'll get that from Liz, as far as your emails, or I'll send it to her so she can forward it to all of y'all. So I know everybody that was on here. That's no problem. All right. Any other questions? Nobody? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And y'all have a wonderful afternoon.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So you know where she got like those folders that say KW on them?
So, Sue probably asked, Sue. She probably was like, yeah, it's interesting.
That was a lot.
Oh, yeah.
That was a whole lot.
Yeah, they told me I'd be really overwhelmed for a couple of days.
Yeah.
I don't know why it stopped like playing on the TV.
Maybe we should lock her out